Hi, Clyde Saloma Shirada here from Africa Media Australia. On the 20th of August 2012, The Age in Melbourne published an article that involved the Deputy Police Commissioner, Mr. Tim Cartwright, who was warning the community about the overrepresentation of Sudanese and African youth groups in crime statistics. Mr. Cartwright also warned of the possibility of a Cronulla type of riot in Victoria. For those who may not be aware of it, Cronulla riots happened in Sydney and involved mostly white mobs against Middle Eastern groups. On the same day, the Assistant Police Commissioner, Mr. Stephen Fontana, held a press conference where he pretty much repeated everything his boss said, except one thing. He kind of retracted a little from the comparison with Cronulla riot. Now, the figures that are being presented through this media release are pretty confronting. And the questions that they raise are many. The first one is, what is the motivation for publishing these statistics? Is it just about informing the community of crime happening within the community? If so, why is this just related to Africans and not the rest of the population? Secondly, why is it that these crime statistics are compared to the wider community rather than to other youth groups? It is often the case that crime is usually higher with youth groups than other groups of the population, and it would therefore make more sense to compare the crime rate within African communities. Specifically, we're talking about two groups, which is just, it's quite a considerable size, but not the majority of Africans living in Australia who are, for the most part, law-abiding citizen and doing a lot of things and contributing to the progress and prosperity of Australia. Now, why wasn't any comparison with other youth groups, and why that comparison that was provided is only limited to the wider society? There are a lot of things that needs to be said there. Talking of the data itself, how accurate is the data? Now, I'm not in any way suggesting the data isn't accurate. It would be good to give a bit more details about this data so it can be checked independently, because data can be interpreted in a variety of ways depending on who's looking at it. Different pictures can be drawn from the data. And is the crime rate within Somali and Sudanese youth groups, or Somali and Sudanese communities, or even the broader African community increasing, decreasing, or stagnating? I did ask that question to Stephen Fontana. Unfortunately, there was no clear answer. Obviously, crime is something serious and need to be addressed, and it is important for our communities, and when I say our communities, and I mean specifically African communities, to be able to do whatever we can to ensure that our youngsters do not engage in a lot of crimes. But we know there may be a lot of causes why many of these groups may be involved in more crime, because these are new and emerging communities. They are vulnerable in a variety of ways. They are often unemployed, disenfranchised, and lacking pathways. Even though in Australia, for instance, the unemployment rate is quite low, but if we look at the unemployment rate for the youth, it is actually much higher. The figures that are being presented are about 20% or more. That's generally. And then when you talk about the youth in multicultural groups, new and emerging groups, it's even much higher. In fact, for communities such as the Somali, the unemployment rate is over 30%. Some even talk of about 50%. All of these factors contribute to why some youth would engage in crime, because maybe they do not have anything to do. They spend their time in the street and they end up in trouble. I also asked the assistant police commissioner what was the police doing specifically to try to assist these groups to address crime. Again, there was no clear answer, and we're still waiting to get a bit more details from Victoria Police. But overall, the important message that I want to bring today is that the release of this type of information, rather than help the youth groups or even the African groups, because when they talk about this, they say African youth group. It's only two communities and only a section of these two communities, but it's all categorized as Africans. This type of information has very significant negative impact on the perception that the population, the Australian population, mainstream Australian population, does have with regards to Africans. It's the whole of the African community in its broader understanding that is in some way being put down by this type of information release, selected information release from the Victorian Police. And I understand it may not be the intention of the police to do this. However, the end result is that when the media, mainstream media, and takes this type of information, they would sensationalize it, and in the end, the people out there will only return one thing: that Africans are committing crime. Anything else is almost not important. Well, Africans, like other groups, may be committing crimes, but there are a lot of Africans who are law-abiding citizens, who do a lot of things positive. The majority of Africans do contribute in a very positive way to the progress of this nation. I had a chat earlier today with about 3 community leaders, and one of them said that he actually even had a comment. He's a lawyer. He had a comment by another lawyer that appears to take this piece of news and being used on him. He was telling his friend that he was very busy, and his friend responded by saying that very busy to keep himself out of trouble, referring to the piece of news that was released in the media. Another community leader said, in fact, if anything, this is nothing short of racial profiling. This may not be the intention of the Victoria Police, but in the end, it impacts not only on this perception and psychology of mainstream Australia, it does so on the police force itself. Members of the police force, when they hear this type of news, they may, in fact, in one way or another, be affected by that in the way they engage with African youth. Already there are quite a number of issues in how the police engages and deals with African youth. In the end, what should we do? Well, it is important for the police to try everything it can to try to minimize the negative impact of this type of information and the way it has been released in the media. It is also important for the police to do more in terms of trying to assist these new and emerging communities to build capacity, capabilities to engage their youth within their communities in much better things, give them pathways with the help of government and other organizations, so that there'll be things that these youth groups would be able to do to develop themselves and achieve their best. It is also important that we continue to communicate to the rest of Australia, and when I say we, I mean mostly Africans, African Australians, that we need to communicate to the rest of Australia that there is a different picture, a different story. It's not all just a single story of negativity, of crime, of issues. There's a story of success, a story of achievement, a story of progress that is even much bigger than the negative story that is being circulated in the media, which brings me back to the whole reason why Africa Media Australia, this new organization that is trying to paint a positive picture of Africans. This is the whole reason why we've been set up and we are operating. We need to tell a different story about Africans. The police must work with the communities, the African communities, to find ways to better communicate with our communities and with mainstream Australia when it comes to Africans. It will be for the benefit of all involved. The African communities are an integral part to the broader Australian community, and there is no reason why it should be singled out when it comes to crime statistics or anything else for that matter, especially when it is negative. Thanks very much.